Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. It has been a minute on this channel, but we are revitalizing it, bringing it back, and shifting our focus to a new topic here in baseball. But let us introduce ourselves first. My name is Tyler Keege, whatever you want to call me. I'm here. I'm part of the original members of BLB, which was 5 episodes long. But we added some new faces, some baseball experts, if you will, in Will Johnson and John Travers. And behind the behind all this is our lovely producer, the Robert Morrison, who was originally started this BLB experience with me. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm up here. Don't worry, I'm not on camera, but the voice of God is always here. I promise.
Yes. The voice of God. Will, I'll let you introduce yourself first, your baseball fandom, or whatever you would like to add to let the fans know about you.
Well, baseball to me has been a religion for my entire life. It was said to me that my dad would read me box scores as a baby. So I have grown up sweating, bleeding baseball. Phillies fan all the way. Grew up outside of Philadelphia, in the Baltimore area now. But no, it's getting the chance to
Welcome to
talk more about
Birdland.
baseball. Welcome to Birdland.
And
Um,
if you, oh, sorry, I was going to say, if you didn't hear that other voice, that is our lovely resident Orioles fan who only really got his swagger back in the last couple of years. I mean, there was, years of heartache, but he's here and he's loud and he's proud. So, John Travers, everybody.
What did SpongeBob say? I'm ugly and I'm proud. Those have been the years, man. But you know what? You know what? We're gonna repeat as AL East champs. I firmly believe that. Do I think 100 wins again? Who knows? That's a lot to ask, but yeah, I think 90 to 95 is just gonna seal it.
And
2024 World
yeah,
Series champs right here, baby.
yeah, there it is. I was waiting for it. We go back and forth with our hot takes. You will definitely see those, but gonna bring you the latest baseball news, our opinions on it, and hopefully we can garner that trust from you. Of we know what we're talking about a little bit, and we'll give our opinions, and at some point we'll get into predictions. Today's episode more of a talk about the offseason moves and remaining free agents and where we do think that those players will fall and our assessments of the trades and free agent signings prior. But yes, BLB, a new vision, if you will. I think I was actually just looking at like our videos from our last videos like 3 years ago. So definitely happy to be back. It's a good time. And without any further ado, we can get into this one. I think we can't start anywhere else other than the Dodgers. If you follow the MLB in any capacity, as my light just turns off for absolutely no reason, love to see that.
Tyler's ghost.
You know that. I mean, the Dodgers had the craziest offseason they probably could have ever had. Obviously, get the big fish. You add, multiple great players as well. And if you're a Dodgers fan, I think it's hard not to be happy about how your offseason went. Of course, starting with Shohei Ohtani signing a massive contract with the Dodgers, one that pays him well, but in a very weird way, if that makes any sense. But Will, I'll go to you first. How do you feel about this move for the Dodgers for Shohei? I mean, what does this move mean to baseball in general? You're obviously talking about a generational talent who has such a large fan base, and going to a team like the Dodgers. I mean, what does this mean really overall for the baseball world?
For the baseball world, I mean, I will say I was someone that was rooting against him signing with one of the big market teams when his sweepstakes were going on. It was pretty clear early on, not just at the beginning of the offseason, but well into the 2023 season, that the Dodgers were going to be a heavy hitter and try to get Otani to stay in LA and come to them. Um, And I just have thoughts about the Dodgers having only 2 years ago being a video game team and winning 116 games and seemed like nothing could stop them. And then now they're back at doing it again, throwing money at it. And yes, you talked about the $700 million contract, which just trying to understand the logistics of it is a whole other thing. Because I don't get how something like that could truly slide. But hey, Dodgers made it work. And now because of that, sure, they aren't getting the pitching out of Shohei Ohtani for their first year, but 9 other years potentially they could have the two-way player. And being that Ohtani is just as much a dynamite hitter as he is a pitcher, that he 5, 6, 7 years from now, he doesn't have the same ability pitching wise, and he can't keep up to the same level of contention. He could very well be an extremely productive DH for this Dodgers team. And since his contract is gonna go in par with Yamamoto and Prout, and for a while at least other young guys that they have, that's Freeman, that they're going to be a force to reckon with for a long, long time. As a Dodgers fan, you have to be thrilled. You got the best player in all of sports, arguably. Um, Man, it's hard to truly it's a great thing for a Dodgers fan. It sucks if you're everyone else. The fact that he gets paid is probably a good thing for baseball and for the players because I mean, 700 million. Hard to stick your nose up at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
money
But
solves
no,
all issues.
there was that thing you remember though, that for that brief moment, there was the brief moment Otani had signed with the Blue Jays. And I will admit, when
Yeah.
that happened, I was actually a little excited. I know for John, you probably would have hated that, but the fact that there was the possibility Otani could have been going to another big heavy hitter team, but not really one of the like top market teams, felt like, all right, this could be the breath of fresh air that's like someone really big like an Otani can go to, not just the Mets, the Dodgers, even the Phillies, Yankees, just and they can take that team from being a mid or upper market team and really push them beyond. Um, yeah,
I think
Honestly, no, you go ahead, Tyler.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think there was a little hope for all of us that hey, he wouldn't sign with the Dodgers or one of these teams that I mean the Dodgers it feels like every year, right? The biggest free agent out there, they're gonna land him. We've seen it, so many times. Freeman going to them, last year. Obviously, it just feels like man, if there's a top free agent out there, the Dodgers, excuse me, are going to pay whatever they need to, even if they go well above the luxury tax to do. And not only, I mean, look, they obviously will get into it in a second here. I mean, not only do they sign Otani, they again land like arguably the best free agent pool that maybe we've ever seen. Like that's how good it's been. I mean, I don't think they could have really had a better offseason if you're the Dodgers. Obviously, the expectations are higher than they've ever been for a team that already had very high expectations. But now, look, there's no excuses now. You have everything. You have the best player in the world. There's no excuses now. But for them, uh, obviously great. And I think over time there's going to be some fans who will get over it. But just to your point earlier, I mean, yeah, the Blue Jays, like they were really rumored, and I think a lot of people legitimately thought he was going there. But I think a lot of baseball fans probably are a little bit salty about his destination in the end. But look, I'm excited to see him, ball out on what will be a really good team, and he'll finally have a supporting cast, which he just did not have in the Angels situation. So,
very
I'm
true.
gonna.
Very
I
true.
I want to derail this whole conversation just real quick because the more I think about this, and by the way, this is what the producer camera looks like. By the way, hope you guys are enjoying.
It's raining in there.
Yeah, it's raining
It's
in here.
raining.
Like this is the type of budget we got going on. It's raining in the control room. So I just a thoughtful question that I just kind of had in my
How
head.
it's not outside of the control room; it's in the control room.
It literally is happening right behind me. I'm actually pressed up against this glass right now, so that's how you know it is just tight in here. But no, so
Put it up against the glass.
Something I want to think about is like, obviously there are certain times where like I remember like, so three of us here went to school near the Baltimore area, and me and Will, being the kind of resident Phillies fans here, we would still go to Orioles games and enjoy Camden Yards and all that stuff. And I remember when we went to the Angels when they were in town in Baltimore. Shohei wasn't there yet, but we were excited to see Mike Trout, obviously for a lot of different reasons. They ended up hitting an absolute bomb right towards us during that game, which was interesting to see. Given how much of a video game team they are now, are we going to see kind of like the Messi and MLS effect, where the ticket prices are going to be just, I mean, they already are for like high tier games and stuff like that to begin with, but are we about to see like a whole nother level of this now? Because we're talking about like a fantasy team at this point.
When you're talking about the
Well.
Dodgers and big market teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees, I was going to say the Red Sox, but to my understanding, they had to drop their prices because nobody wants to go to those games because of the shape the team's in. But when you're talking about the Dodgers, the Yankees, other big market teams, I think for the case of Shohei, yeah, I think so. I mean, to get a good seat in Yankee Stadium, it was already close to what, three something, 300, something like that. That is football numbers in terms of cost of tickets. And when you look at what Shohei Ohtani brings to the Dodgers, you got to look at it this way: the Dodgers, they threw money at their problems, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it like this: Dave Roberts is still there, still
Yeah.
the manager, and it doesn't matter how much money they throw at the issue. If they don't make the right moves come game time, it does not make a difference.
I think it's interesting you bring that up. So I my grandfather actually, like when Utley went to the Dodgers, he was a huge Utley fan. So, he started to watch the Dodgers a lot more. And that's anytime he talked about the Dodgers, that was the first thing he talked about was Dave Roberts is literally like, there's just times where he just is not making the right decisions. Now, granted, they did win a World Series in his time there, so it's kind of hard to argue that at that point. But there is a lot of times where you kind
2020.
of question.
Oh, hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
I know
That
it's a
World
Mickey Mouse ring.
Series, That was
It is
not
100% a
Okay,
Mickey
look.
Mouse ring.
Listen, a World Series is a World Series, and I, as an Orioles fan, have
Tell that to
yet
everyone
to
who hates
see
the
it.
Astros.
But like, I mean, I hate the Astros too. But here we are. The point is that yes, they still won the World Series, but it comes with an asterisk, in my opinion. Like it's just like they didn't go 162; they went 60. And if you want to think about it, they technically went what, 80? 80 games is what they played. That's
Roughly,
what,
I guess.
little less than half. At the most, they
Yeah,
played
I
was
do
80.
think
That's a
I do think
Yeah.
durability is a big question when it comes to truly being that contender beyond the season. I know hearing coaches or hearing managers, hearing articles constantly talking about health, health, health for years had always been kind of this nag to me because, like, I get it, you got to be healthy, but I never truly understood until seeing the Phillies in the postseason again in 2022 and kind of how things were collapsing a little bit near the end with some of the pitching, some of the hitting. That there is this sense of the durability thing when it comes to the team. So yes, there's a little bit of an asterisk with the Dodgers 2020 season because they only played 80 games roughly throughout the regular season and the postseason. They
what
are
was their record? They
absolutely in
didn't lose
better.
20 games, right?
What was
They didn't
that?
lose 20 games
20
that year.
games?
Yeah, they didn't lose 20 games that year. Am I correct in saying that?
You'd be in the ballpark probably because if it was 80, 75 games. Um, what I'm trying to get at is that uh, there is an asterisk, and so now it's are the Dodgers set up to be this big dynamite team in the future? And looking at the other moves they did this offseason, you have Yamamoto, who's coming over from Japan, absolutely a generational talent. But there is, and I think there's going to be a couple years potentially of growing pains. I don't know. I don't. It feels rare that you really get that like first, second year, like they're immediately like full capacity. I mean, it took Shohei, granted he was a two-way player, it took him what 3-4 years until he finally was able to become the two-way player. And of course, since then he's took off. So Yamamoto might take a couple years of growing pains. You got Glass now from the Rays, very talented pitcher, a lot of injury issues, has a history of getting hurt. There, you don't
Made
have
of
a lot of
glass now.
guarantee that by the end of
Nice.
you're going to have Glass now
I get-
at full health. Same goes with James Paxton. Same goes with Clayton Kershaw.
Well,
So
it's interesting you bring up Kershaw because think about it, Kershaw, he went from being like the number one like face of the Dodgers to being like the just journeyman. He's been here forever guy, and like not the face of the organization anymore. If you think about it,
that kind
so
of
he's
was
I
in
going
think
to
it's
an
happen
interesting
with
spot.
time.
Yeah, I
But
think
he
it's not.
still is a face because he's staying with the team. There is still that he still is like you think Dodgers, you think Kershaw, you still see Kershaw,
Yeah.
and you still get good Kershaw. He is still a face. He is now no longer the face, and he hasn't probably been since they had Betts. Now they have Freeman for their third year, and now you got Ohtani. So he is definitely. It hasn't the first year he's kind of fallen out of the limelight of being the face, but he is still very much a generational talent that is still when you think of Dodgers, you think of him and how well he does for that team. Minus the
Come
postseason.
July, you will not think of Clayton Kershaw when you think of the Dodgers. You will think of Shohei Ohtani.
I
If
think
you
it's
think
nice
of
to
healthy.
Shohei
have him
Ohtani
back, though.
now,
Oh yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
say
look.
now because I don't think you've seen him necessarily playing in a Dodgers uniform.
have you seen his batting practice already? Those like
Dude,
10
they're
nukes he took
hyping
the
him
other
up.
day?
I
I
did no, I
mean,
didn't see his back practice, but I saw the close up of his scar, and good God, uh, it literally looks like somebody golfed on his arm. So Tommy John
look,
surgery is quite the surgery.
I think, by the way, 17 losses in 2020, 43 and 17. Um, look, I think if you're Kershaw and the Dodgers, it's good to have him back, and he doesn't need to be that face anymore, right? Like, look, Father Time catches up to everybody. He's not the pitcher he once was. We understand that, and he doesn't need to be that guy. They get Yamamoto. He's going to be obviously should be phenomenal. Next year, and I'm just talking in the pitching sense, right? Like next year, Otani comes into the rotation. You have Glass now, who I think is super, super talented. I was devastated back in the day with probably the worst trade in like MLB history when he got traded for Chris Archer as a Pirates fan, seeing him tear it up in Tampa, and I think that's such a good shining. You still have Walker Buehler there. Like there's there is a argument to be made that like any of those guys could be an ace anywhere else, and they have four of them. I mean, three this year, but eventually when Otani gets back into that pitching, so it's just been absolutely crazy for them. And also, I want to talk about Teoscar Hernandez, who they add as a bat as well. I think he is a very underrated signing. The guy
Definitely
just
overshadowed.
has, yeah. Oh, and that's the thing, right? Like, if he signs with any other team, it's probably talked about a little bit more. But he signed with a team that just had the best offseason they could have really had. But this is a guy who has some power in his bat, and he's been good throughout his career. Like, I think there was times where he was kind of maybe playing second fiddle to somebody wherever he was, but he's a really important addition for them, I believe.
I think that's an
So
understatement.
yeah,
When it comes
I,
to the bats of the Dodgers, I think it's definitely going to have to be a marathon. And my worry, if I'm a Dodgers fan, is that they are burning bright, and eventually they're just gonna burn out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, um, it's possible. I think this will be a conversation that we don't address today, but could come up in future episodes. We've kind of had this conversation about how many World Series do the Dodgers need to win in 10 years for this to be worth it. You have the last couple off seasons you've had. You have now this one, and it is just. I mean, the if you're a Dodgers fan, again, you're ecstatic. If you're anybody else, you're probably a little bit salty about it. But
I feel like
uh,
that topic by itself is like a 3-hour episode because
oh,
I feel
I
like
know. That's
there
why
is
I'm like,
so many wild
yeah.
opinions that I feel like could be had in regards to this topic. I really want to find a Dodgers fan to talk this one through too, because we could objectively look at it, but at the end of the day, they're the ones they're not going to suffer. Let's be real with ourselves here, but they're the ones who are going to be going on this crazy ride that they're about to go on here. So what justifies the cost of admission for them?
I mean, they might suffer.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know
I
how
mean,
it's
yeah,
going
that's
to
true.
play out.
They absolutely could.
Let's
I
move
mean,
on
Shohei
to.
could.
Don't.
Never mind.
Well, I was gonna say this narrative has popped up. By the way, there's people like Shohei could falter out. Of course, I mean, of course he can, but it's also Shohei. I mean,
He could get
again,
hit
you're
by a
talking about.
bus too. Like, I mean, a million
Yeah,
different
dude.
things
Like,
could happen here.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what
you're
I'm
talking
saying.
about
Is like,
somebody. Yeah, look, anything. You could say that about anything, though, and I think, I mean, for Shohei's case, he's in the best case scenario probably for him. Again, he finally has some talent around him, so they'll look good. Moving on, though, I want to talk about. I mean, by the way, I think the NL West easily wins the offseason. Not even close. I think the Dodgers get better. Uh, the Giants get better. The D-backs get better. Let's talk about the Giants. They pick up Robbie Ray, which is a huge acquisition for them. Looking to need, obviously wanted to get pitching this offseason. They land a big player in him. I mean, Robbie Ray has been great for a very long time now, and the Giants finally get him. I mean, Will, what does this mean for the Giants, who, again, they have a pretty decent offseason themselves, quietly overshadowed by the Dodgers?
Um, so here's where I'm going to tear them down right away. I will say, to get
Oh,
things started,
no.
the best thing they did this offseason was getting rid of Kapler. And I'm saying that as a Phillies fan, and I don't feel like I have to go into why I think that. I think he had his run at first when he got manager of the year, and he did deserve it the year he got it, doing something unprecedented with that team. Uh, but it was kind of a luck shot. I feel like it was a crapshoot. It worked out for that team, and that's kind of about it. But here's my thing with the Giants. Um, well, first with the Robbie Ray signing, or trade, I should say, not signing. He's hurt until about halfway through the season. So you weren't really
Yes.
getting a full year out of him. At the moment, you're getting half of a year. Still have Logan Webb, who was the runner-up for Cy Young in the NL last year, leading the way. You signed Jordan Hicks as a starter, and I have questions about that. I do not like the trend of making relief pitchers into starting pitchers, especially hard throwers. I believe Hicks started out as a pitcher though when he was drafted and or in the minors, then went to closing and is now wanting to get back into it. So I was hoping the Phillies were going to get him as a back end option. But if you wanted to be a starter, glad to go elsewhere. Uh, the other signings, Jung Ho Lee, there's always the question about coming over from Korea or Japan about um how well their skills will transition. Lee was was a contact hitter, less so power, though I do think he had a year or two where he had over 20 home runs. So he might be a good staple at the top of the order. And then Jorge Soler, who just signed with the team for 3 years. Uh, he's a bit of a coin toss. He can give you power for sure. He's got 36 home runs last year with the Marlins. Year before though, he was not great. Also battling injury, only had about 13. So this Giants team, to me, they made some nice additions, probably more so for the future than this year, since you have half a year of Ray. and
Yeah.
you can kind of see what type of player Lee will be transitioning over. And maybe he is a little off this year, but then like next year he is more adjusted and picks up. So I still don't see the Giants doing much else up the ladder in the division. They're probably pretty safe in the fourth spot. Um, but maybe having, was it Bob Melvin, I believe, is the new manager, can help lead
Yeah.
them uh, afterwards. And they have a little bit more. They're a little bit more balanced than they were last year. But I mean, they did nice stuff for the future. I'm very questionable though about what they'll really get done or prove in 2024.
I will
I
say
think that's a
this:
good point.
it is it this Otani thing, this Otani signing is probably killing the Giants more than anybody else. Because if there is anyone that a Giants fan hates more right now uh, than Shohei Ohtani, I will be shocked.
I think the
Because
biggest thorn right now, though, for the Giants is not the Dodgers, but the Diamondbacks, because the Diamondbacks surprised
Oh
everyone
yeah.
last year by making the postseason,
Thorn, you're right. Thorn,
sliding into there,
yes.
and then
However,
this offseason they're arguably even more balanced than they were before. So now you have a Diamondbacks team that is coming off of getting to the World Series, just plowing their way through the best teams in the National League, or battling out. They were a stocky group and they never quit. And now they're probably a team where last year, if you were looking at predictions at the beginning of the season, they were fairly in par, maybe even some had a tad under where the Giants were. So they're probably the biggest thorn in the Giants. The Padres are a team that maybe give the Giants some chance because of the way they dipped off, and now they don't have Soto, they don't have Hader in the back end. But the Padres still have a very dynamite lineup that did explode um in September last year and gave a little bit of a playoff push. It didn't work out. It was, the odds were extremely against
you're
them. But
you're
right
you're
now, I'd
right
say
on
the
those
Giants
accounts.
just they don't have
I
to
think
worry
you're
about the
right.
Dodgers. Dodgers are going to win the division. They just need to worry about getting into the postseason. And right now, I'm not sure they've done enough to put themselves up with their other wild card contenders in their division, the Padres and the Diamondbacks.
Well, that's the thing, is that you're right in terms of having the thorn in their side be the Diamondbacks, and then also having to compete with the Padres. I mean, the Rockies are, they're there. But in terms of, they we know that the Giants hate the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are now always going to be big brother to the Giants.
They're not going to be Big
Ironically,
Brother. They'll be a
given the
god to
names, but
everyone else. The Big Brother are going to be the Padres and the Diamondbacks. They're trying to kick the little brother down and just be the bully. The Giants need to find a way to step up, and whether that's having doing something like they did a couple years ago, where they did a rotation and the platoon situation worked out perfectly, or maybe under Melvin now they'll just have new leadership and guys will step up more who underperformed last year. We don't know.
well,
I'm
the
down on the
Giants
Giants
need
for
to
this year, but
figure it out. They need to stop thinking that this is going to be 2014, 2010, uh, and 2012 again. They need to stop thinking like that. And I think that's what
they're
they're doing,
not
is
thinking
they're
that.
resting on their laurels.
They're
I think
going no,
that they're
they
resting
have
on their
young pitchers
laurels.
right now. It's young pitchers right now is what they're relying on. Webb worked. Harrison came up last year. He's got a shot. I don't think Hicks would have been the option I would have gone to if you truly are trying to fill out your rotation to be more of a contender. But he could very well be a surprise transition back into being a starter, and that completely helps their team. They just need to have they need to have the young, see where the young pitchers at that are stepping up. Duvall is an absolute godsend in the um back end of that bullpen. What he led the National League, I believe, in saves last year with like 50 or something. So maybe a few questions about the offense. Still, even with the Soler signing, uh, they're probably need another good pitcher. I feel like starting pitcher, another decent bat, unless there's a young guy or two who can step up and fill some of the power gap that they have in that team. But now there's still a couple years out before they're truly back to where they are, which is why the Robbie Ray deal may not be something that necessarily benefits the team this year. but the remaining, I think,
Yeah.
2 years he has on the deal afterwards could be the right thing that helps round out that team and makes them jump over potentially the Padres and slide into a wild card spot.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's safe to say for the Giants in 2024, pretenders, not contenders.
I think, yeah, it's a big point. Like, right, like it's not maybe so much for this year, but what can you build? Because that is going to be one of the better divisions in baseball. I do think.
Mhm.
Kind of as John said, you have the Rockies who like are very forgotten
They're
about,
there.
maybe
They're
rightfully so.
trying.
Yeah, they're in
They
As
are
there.
my
going
as
to
my
be the
beloved
worst
fiance
team in
said,
baseball. They're
Yeah.
going to
Well,
be the worst team in
"Oh,
baseball.
how do you
I mean,
figure the
look,
worst team in baseball? You have the Athletics fighting you for that spot,
I think the
I mean,
Athletics are going
and
to
the
be a tad
Royals."
better than you expect. They're not going to be better than the worst 3 teams in the league, and they're gonna get last. But no, I think the Rockies are just a toilet team,
I
to be
mean,
honest
I
real
with
mean,
you.
they're
quick
gonna
for
they're gonna have
the
to fall.
A's, it's easy to accept that you're about to have a bad season when you have a new house that you're moving into in a year or two.
A
It's
literal house,
it's
by the
actually
way.
4 years, and let's put it this way: they're about to be homeless after this season, and they're gonna have to make a pit stop at the Salt Lake
They're
City
in
motel
discussions right
in
now.
order to play
They're in
baseball.
discussions.
Multiple
They're in
franchises
discussions.
going to Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City's about to have a blast with sports for like 3 years.
Hey, I
Yeah,
mean, you gotta give them something. Let's move on to uh we mentioned this a little bit, the D-backs. I think I, in my opinion, out of all the teams really this year outside of the Dodgers, my favorite all season for any team is the Diamondbacks. Look, you have a team last year that makes it to the World Series pretty unexpectedly, right? Like I don't think
Telling
anybody
me.
had them had them really in the playoffs, let alone
I
getting
did
into the
not
World
have the
Series. Like they
Diamondbacks in the World Series,
look,
and as NL
they
champs
were a
on my
fringe
bingo
team.
card.
Yeah,
That
like
was not
look, they
on
were a
my bingo
fringe
card.
team.
I
It
had
was
them
going to
around
rely a
84 wins
lot.
in my prediction. I just didn't have them as a playoff team. So all the
Yeah,
potential.
it was going to rely on their young guys, right? Like, what were they going to be able to do? Corbin Carroll, obviously, was the big one. And those guys stepped up. Now, you add pitching. They sign Erod to a deal. They get Gurriel back. They make a trade for Eugenio Suarez, which I think that's also a little underrated. And then they sign Jock Peterson as well, which kind of an underrated signing, that one. Also could be really good with how many right-handed pitchers are in that division, like right-handed dominant pitchers. I actually think that could be like a pretty decent signing. We'll have to see. But I mean, again, the Diamondbacks, you have a team where they exceeded expectations last year and they got better. Now, I want to say as well, I think it's going to be hard for them, right? Because now that you made the World Series, your expectations are way up here. And is it possible that they, don't make it to that spot again? Obviously, they had a phenomenal run. So I think yes, they got better, and I think they do have a good chance of being a playoff team this year and maybe making some noise in the postseason. I think we have to taper down our expectations a little bit just because of how we are expecting them to be after a World Series run. But having said that, I do think they had a phenomenal offseason. They're really starting to build something there in Arizona. They still have their young guys that are going to continue to progress and get better. They had some veteran talent. And look, I think the D-backs are going to be a team to watch out for this year. I definitely think the Dodgers are going to have that division in the bag. But this is a team that makes the wild card spot and, probably somebody that you do not want to face in the first round of the playoffs. And
I
yeah,
mean,
again, I really like the Diamondbacks.
when it comes to the Diamondbacks, you can see it going either way for them, in my opinion. I could see them being, a fourth place team in that division. I could also see them being, the top wild card team coming out of the National League. So what you were saying in terms of expectations, if I'm a Diamondbacks fan, I don't know if I have expectations. I almost think that it's all icing and gravy and, you know, good times for the foreseeable future because we weren't expecting this, you know.
No,
The
absolutely
thing
not.
that's scary the most about the Diamondbacks, and that's why I think they are poised for another strong run in the postseason again this coming year, is that top 3 punch in Zach Allen, Merrill Kelly, and Eduardo Rodriguez. Having seen the what the Phillies did in 2022 with behind Wheeler and Nola, Diamondbacks basically did something similar, if not the same thing, behind Galen and Kelly. This past offseason, they had a strong top of the rotation, some question marks after there, a well-rounded bullpen that was overperforming, and then an offense that was just really consistent, giving you like 4 or 5 runs a game. Occasionally they had more, occasionally they had less. But the pitching is what helped. And I don't see that pitching faltering at all. I see that pitching staying just as good, if not getting stronger, with was it Brandon Plouffe now having the postseason experience and a stronger second half than the start of last year for him. Where if that team gets in the postseason, they have easily 3 or 4 people they could turn to rotation wise, and the same core in the bullpen. The question will be is if the offense underperforms a little bit. Marte has been very consistent, no questions with him. Carroll, no questions with him. I do agree that I like the signings I like the signing of Peterson. I like the trade for Suarez. I know there's probably a bit of a question mark in regards of is he going to only bat like 210, 220, maybe hit you 30 home runs, which I know at first may not sound like a lot. It's kind of the new contemporary player, strikes out a lot, hits some home runs. However, he is also replacing Evan Longoria. So from your comparison of you're going from Longoria to Suarez, that's an upgrade. You're going from a platoon, not real DH situation last year to Jack Peterson, who underperformed last year with the Giants, but did well in the previous 2 years. He hits 20 home runs for them. That's 250. That's probably enough. Christian Walker, I think, is one of the most underappreciated first basemen in baseball. He is consistently a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy. Gurriel seemed to fit really nicely, comfortable. He's versatile, can play multiple places. Moreno is shaping out to be a really strong player. I think this Diamondbacks team would only falter this year if their offense just really just not, or basically, I guess, would do too much for them to fall out. Because pitching-wise, they look great. Offense, they just seem to be a little better than they were last year and more well-rounded to enter the postseason, and then just give yourself, again, 4 or 5 runs a game and put the rest in Galen and Kelly's hands.
So this isn't necessarily relevant to players. However, the Diamondbacks' new uniforms are sick. I will say that.
I haven't seen them, really.
They are very, very nice. They're so much better than those ugly uniforms that they had last year. So, yeah, top notch for the design team there out in Arizona.
Hey, look good, feel good, play good. Yeah, I think. Look, as I said, it's going to also be dependent on what the rookies from last year do. If they continue to play at the level they did, look, I think Corbin Carroll is phenomenal. He's going to be a really good player for a long time. But as you said, I like their moves, and they're returning some bullpen pieces from last year. Paul Sewald coming over from Seattle last year was a nice signing for them. They have him back, and okay, I like them.
Yeah,
They're
look at those.
Nice.
I like the black ones. I also go to their road hats, their road unis. I like the black and red right there with the teal outline. I think this is a design that this might be the best design since their purple unis. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, I completely missed those, but yeah, they are. They're looking nice, clean. And hopefully, yeah, they are, and hopefully for them, the D-backs, that is, they will continue to have some success that we've seen last year. Let's move on to a big signing for the Astros, landing Josh Hader. We know what we have in the Astros, right? They have been
trash cans?
one of the trash cans, yes, the asterisks, whatever you refer to them as. That's here nor there. We know how good they've been, how consistent they are year from year. They add a piece in Josh Hader, who kind of was a little up and down last year at times, I will say, and he's been so good over his career. But you add him to the back end of your rotation, and I think that's scary for a lot of teams, right? Like, you have your guy, your closure in there in Houston now.
They lost Kendall Graveman
Uh,
for all of 2024, so I guess this is just like, well, we need to replace someone. Let's just get like above and beyond the replacement. Like, you need this level of replacement. We're just gonna go up to like here.
Hey, the
So
Astros' new uniform is looking clean right there too.
I mean,
top Halloween outfit. So the Astros are absolutely dominant in their bullpen still, and their team is still going to be something that's hard to
The
take
AL
down.
West is theirs to lose. It's always going to be theirs to
Yeah.
lose. I gotta be honest.
With the
Until
Rangers
further
not
notice,
having DeGrom and Scherzer for more than half of the season, yeah, it is most likely the Astros division to lose, and Hader just helps solidify
are the
a whole
Rangers an
back end.
underdog after winning the World Series?
that's
Pitching wise,
Are they an
maybe
underdog?
that
yeah. I mean, look, I think because of the offseason that the Dodgers had and a couple other teams being getting healthy again, I don't know if I would call them an underdog per se, but I don't think they're not the betting favorite by any means. And I think because kind of like Will said, right? Like they're going to be missing some of their pitchers for the start of the year. Maybe people are not talking about them like they really should be talked about after winning a World Series. But no, I think I thought when they can start to construct this team a few years ago, it was going to be uh, it was going to get to that point where they were going to win the World Series and they were going to be good for a long time. The problem for them, of course, is they're going to be battling the Astros for many, many years. And for the Astros, right, you have most of your core back. You have the names that are always there on offense. Really, nothing has changed there. I mean, you look at the back end of their bullpen; it's absolutely insane. You got Rafael Montero, Ryan Presley, and Josh, like your back end, like that. That is up there as one of the best back three bullpen arms in baseball. And yeah, I just think, like, as we kind of said, you have that staple now on your back end, somebody who has been so good for so long. I mean, as a Pirates fan, like, dude, the amount of times like they would play the Brewers, this guy comes in and just locks it down so many times. A phenomenal pitcher. Again, a little up and down last year, but he finds his new home there in Houston. And yeah, again, I think they're going to be a team that's obviously back in the mix this year as well.
Yeah, I mean
Nothing
they're
to add on that.
basically
Okay.
I mean, what else is there to say? The Astros, it's their division to lose. They
you're right. It's
are,
their back end.
yeah,
It's the back
Yeah.
end. The back end. I'd even add Abreu into that mix for their back end, who will have to serve the remaining of his suspension. To start the season, that's only like 2 games. So with that back end, it's brutal.
All right,
I'm
let's
waiting
move on
for
to
the next topic.
yeah, I was gonna say I know John's chomping on the bit. This is gonna
I mean, that's what I was
take
saving my
some
oxygen for.
moving on. Let's go.
Big
Come on,
trade.
keep it moving.
Huge trade in the offseason here. Corbin Burns heads to the Orioles. The Orioles get their ace, or I really shouldn't even say. I mean, he's going to be obviously a great pick for them. They continue to build. Obviously, very impressed with how the Orioles have been over the past year. John, I will start this off with you. What is your trade grid here for the Orioles and the Corbin Burns trade?
I think both teams honestly made out pretty fairly. If I'm being honest, I'm gonna look. I'm trying to pull up the Orioles potential uh, five man here because this is probably the best pitching rotation that I've seen out of Baltimore my
As John
entire
looks
life.
for that pitching rotation, I'll quickly add that I think they are top 3 starting rotations in baseball.
Yeah,
I think
mean,
so
you had a
too.
guy
I
like
mean,
Corbin Burns, yeah.
you don't make this move unless you think that you can sign him to a long term deal. That's number one in terms of Michael in Mike Elias. I think that when you look at just overall, this is probably the best move that the Orioles could have made to help improve them and take that next step and really stamp their feet in the ground and say, "We're here to stay." All right, New York, All right, Boston, Toronto, Tampa Bay, we're here to stay. We are improving, and in all honesty, this is one of the most exciting off seasons that I've had as an Orioles fan, because of this trade, because of the signing, because of the potential for the future that we have. And when it comes down to it, the Orioles are, in my opinion, favorites to win the AL East. Like, you have to, and I'm not just saying that because of the towel behind me and the shirt on my back. Like, you have to look at it that way. The Yankees haven't done, the Red Sox haven't done anything. The Yankees didn't really do much, at least not what they should have. And
We'll talk
then the
about
Blue
that.
Jays missed out on Otani, and the Rays are sticking with their mold of they're going to be that they're going to be around no matter what, because somehow they always figure it out. But you know it when it comes down to it, this is lethal. This is absolutely lethal.
That's going to be another division that's just bonkers, right? Like they have been for the last few years, but you have so much talent within it. Oh, that's a nice Orioles logo there. Of course, production
Yes, it is.
already episode 1 already pulling his shenanigans. He loves to do this, and he's cracking up to himself right now. I don't even hear him, but I just know he is.
Up.
But this is what he does. But yeah, I think for the Orioles, right? It's a great move. They get that guy who's been there. He's done that. We obviously have seen how great he's been in Milwaukee. They add him to the rotation, and yeah, man, like the Orioles, they're a fun team to kind of look at because it wasn't that long ago that they were obviously really struggling, but the way that they built up their prospects, the prospects have come
They
up.
weren't struggling; they were rebuilding.
Yes, they're rebuilding. But look, for a lot of teams, rebuilding means not what the Orioles have made, right? Like they are a contender. They really, I think, in the next 3, 4, 5 years, have a really legitimate shot at winning the World Series. And obviously, getting Corbin Burns is big, as you said. Resigning him going to be a focus, but for now, a nice trade for them. Going back the other way in this trade, I believe is Joey Ortiz and DL Hall, along with a draft pick, which didn't really think
I've
trading
never
draft
seen
picks
that
was a
happen
thing.
before.
Yeah,
Am I right about that?
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
football
Like,
thing. That's not a baseball
That's not
I'm
a
thing.
like,
baseball thing, but you know what? Hey, listen.
I'm like 2 prospects on the 34th pick. What sport is this? Yeah, interesting there. But I
Not
look,
alone.
I think for the Brewers, there is some value there. See what you can get out of those guys, and now they have.
I will say, so Joey Ortiz, he was blocked. Our infield situation. Obviously, we have Jackson Holliday, Gunnar Henderson, who, in my opinion, should have won the Gold Glove, and was Rookie of the Year. You have, you have those two guys who are young, might actually be younger than uh, um, Ortiz in terms of Henderson. I know, obviously, Jackson Holliday is, because he's not even old enough to drink yet. But so there really wasn't a spot for him. And then DL Hall, one thing that I'm sad about with him was that he was slated to be the next Jim Palmer for us. I mean, we've been saying that for the past 30 years, no, 40 years. But because that's what Dylan Bundy was the next Jim Palmer. Anyway, he DL Hall just, I don't know, he just didn't pan out here as a starter. Think he was blocked.
expendable.
Yeah, I mean, he was moved to the bullpen. He would have been very
other
helpful in the
starters
bullpen.
other starters that proved themselves a little quicker than he did, so he became the odd one out in that sense, and could
Yeah,
be
they
traded away.
took-
And because he isn't the top of the tier of what you guys have, it barely makes a dent, if anything, into the pool you have, which also shows now that your team did trade for Corbin Burns, that, hey, the Orioles are now willing to go the extra mile to bring in that someone to help lead the team and now you have new ownership. So if the Orioles can extend Corbin Burnes, which I still think is a long shot. I know there's a lot of positivity now that they could, at least that there is you have the
Money solves
best
everything.
chance good of doing it. But I mean, Burns could very well at least test the market before deciding whether or not he wants to stay in Baltimore. But now that you
Yeah, I
have
mean,
the
he's
the
not a
Burns
Scott
trade
Boras
done, it
guy,
tells
right?
other teams that you will make it.
Yeah.
Now that
I don't.
the Burns trade happened, the Orioles still have plenty of room to trade other prospects or other players, and they need to bring in someone else to help with the bullpen or with the lineup. Um, or maybe then the offseason they'll
Before
finally make that splash.
before we get off this topic, I have the potential 5 for the Orioles. We have Corbin Burns, number 1, ace. You have Kyle Bradish, who finished number 4 in Cy Young last year. You have
Outstanding year.
Grayson Rodriguez, who has the potential to be a Cy Young candidate. John Means, who was our guy for the longest time, our number 1, and then potentially Dean Kramer on the back end. It, when you look at the Orioles, their 5, you, I mean, this is just the starting pitching. I mean, it's going to beat the Yankees hitting. Good pitching beats good hitting.
I think like if you have a guy in your third spot that you know has the potential to be a Cy Young candidate, you're probably in a pretty good position, right? And they are.
Just a little bit.
Uh, Look, moving on from the starting position, I do want to touch on this briefly for them. They lose Felix Batista for all of 2024, so they
Mhm.
sign Craig Kimbrell. Kind of brought this up for two reasons.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think that'll be a question based on what we've seen in the postseason, but also obviously some stake in it from our resident baseball professional analyst, whatever you want to call him here. Well, Kimbrel goes and to the Orioles. They hope he is not what he was in the playoffs. We know, look, Craig Kimbrel, we know how good he is. He's been around forever, but obviously a shaky end to his time in Philly. How do you feel about the signing for the Orioles?
I think that it does enough to help with the back end. You have Cano as well, and you have plenty of others in the bullpen you can go to. I could go on a whole other tangent talking about Kimbrel in the postseason and not necessarily in the strong negative path that I feel like is predicted. Um, I still kind of like Craig Kimbrel, but I like Craig Kimbrel, knowing he is not the Kimbrel you had before the low twos. There was 100. He's a mid threes guy right now. He'll give you, if he's the closer, maybe low 20s in saves. So with an Orioles team that is coming off of 100+ win season, he is nowhere near going to replace Bautista, who is arguably the best relief pitcher in the American League. But Kimbrel can do enough to help keep the team still in the mid 90s with their win total this coming year. He will, though, blow games that Bautista wouldn't. So you're going to have to go with his ups and downs. His downs can be very low, gives up home runs, can't find the strike zone. But his highs, when he is hitting the corners with his fastball, reaching 96, 97 still, he can look just as sharp as he did before. I think the problem with the postseason last year for the Phillies was that Kimbrel was overused, especially in the midway point of that Diamondback series, and he just was gone. Like he was overused. He didn't get any rest. Um, so with the Orioles having well balanced bullpen as well, the hope would be is if the Orioles get back to the postseason, just don't overuse Kimbrel. Do pay attention. If Kimbrel is wild, immediately pull him back and make him more of a middle relief guy and throw Cano into the closer's role. Maybe the Orioles will pick up another back end guy before entering the postseason. But
I think that's
Kimbrel, I do
that's
like
pretty
as a
good.
veteran presence to that bullpen.
Yeah.
I think that's a good assessment in terms of the comment of picking up another back end guy when it comes down to it, whether that be through trade, free agency, whatever. In terms of one thing that, and I know JT Realmuto is arguably the best catcher in the National League, um, but and I don't know how his talent is with this aspect of catching, but Adley Rushman steals strikes very very well. Like he will make a pitcher look very good, even when they're not. So when you look at what Adley could do in terms of stealing those strikes for Kimbrel, you gotta take that into account as well. I mean, you got to look at it that way. If you get it close, Adley can bring it back. You know.
Look, let's I'll say this about Kimbrel to kind of end us off here. This is a guy who was an all-star last year, and we know what he's been throughout his career. I think obviously it was a rough postseason, but this is somebody who can be definitely formidable for them. And with how talented that roster is in general, I think he's in a really good spot. I like that signing there for the Orioles. Staying in the division, do want to quickly touch on the Yankees, who obviously
I will
every
be the
offseason
devil's
have some
advocate to
say.
John's optimistic Orioles.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
know
I
What do
like
you
this
What do you mean by
already.
that? What do you mean by that?
Look,
I don't think
my
the
biggest
Soto
concern
deal
with the
was the
Yankees,
biggest
as
thing.
always, is going to be health. My biggest concern with the Yankees is always going to be health. I think that's always just year in, year out with Judge, Stanton, now in their pitching, and Rodon, and Cortez, and now even Stroman to an extent. There is concern about health. However, let's just take that aside and just say, okay, if we get 150 out of 140 games out of every player and we get 30 starts at least, the Yankees are arguably the best team in the American League if they are healthy, and that's the problem. But to tell me you have a lineup of Judge, Soto, Stanton back to back to back, that is a killer threesome. Like, there is Judge was on pace last year before hurt. Was he really going to do it? Who knows? Beat his 62 home runs. Whatever he found during that season transitioned over. He was averaging more home runs per plate appearances. Soto, if you can put him right ahead of Judge, one of the things with the Padres was that Soto seemed to, at least for the first half of the season, was walking a ton, which he always does. Maybe wasn't hitting as much power, but if you put Soto in a situation where he's in front of Judge and he walks 100 plus times, and then Judge hits 40 home runs, that's an incredible boost to an offense that was very reliant on Judge last year. So if Judge goes under the knife again and has to be on the IL, you do have Soto now as a backup. The Rizzo situation was also very freaky, so I'm willing to push that aside as he had a concussion, it wasn't treated well, and that obviously hurt his season a lot.
I
The
think that's
Yankees
an
also have a
understatement
pretty
of
the Yankees probably also have a very they have a very deep outfield. They got Verdugo from the Red Sox that can help at the top of the order. They got Grisham as a fourth outfielder now, so they can also now fill in case some injuries do happen. And then when you look at the rotation, Garrett Cole won the Cy Young. He's going to do something like that again. Marcus Stroman is still very much an excellent front end rotation guy. Can give you a low threes, best years, high twos ERA. Pretty consistent with around 30 starts. Rodon obviously had some struggles last year dealing with injuries and couldn't really come back and even find a sense of his previous year's form. But if you can get him to at least find a middle ground as your number 3 guy, that's great. Same goes with Cortez. And if you have all 4 of them healthy for most of the season, especially at the end of the year, if you're going into the postseason, they are very much the team to be in the AL as much as the Orioles, if not more, because they are the Yankees.
yeah,
I'm going to
I
disagree with you because of
that is a crazy picture.
It is 100% accurate.
I yeah,
Yes.
that is to scale. Um, I'm going to disagree with you, and not because I'm an Orioles fan, but because the fact that the Yankees, they didn't do anything to help pitching wise and defensively. They got Stroman, yes, they, but when you get into their bullpen, it's same old Yankees. You look at it on paper, they're the best team, but when you look at their production, they're not going to live up to what they are on paper.
But what was
It
the
in
biggest issue with the Yankees last year, though, is the thing. What was the problem that they had previous year before, or 2 years previously? What I mean by that is before Judge had his record breaking year, was that the offense seemed too reliant on Judge. Once Judge was out of the lineup, they were just a shell of a team. Pitching was still good when healthy, but they were a shell of a team. This
I think
year,
it's
and
still going to be.
they
They're
could
still going to
very
be
well.
relying on
That could.
Judge.
I mean, all that could happen again. Well, sure, because Judge is the power bet, but now you have Soto as the piggyback off of him. If you lose Judge, you still have Soto. If you lose Stanton but have Judge and Soto, you don't care. Um, they have a better team than before. If you also think of who they're replacing, Verdugo instead of Aaron Hicks, I think anyone would take that. So
Oh.
you're basically taking, they are a better team no matter how you look at it. And I think it's hard to say that they're the same team because they're definitely not the same team. They could still perform the same if the injury bug hurts them. But that's the case with any team who has a ton of injuries and then completely underperforms. The Yankees are better off this year at least having protection if that happens. It is going to be a dogfight to win the division, so they may not overtake the Orioles in the end. But as long as they can have their pieces by the time the season ends, you're telling me that you would not want Garrett Cole, Marcus Stroman, Rodon, and Cortez as your four in the playoffs? You're crazy behind Judge and Soto.
No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I'm saying is that we've seen this. Are you just gonna have fun with everything behind me? Uh,
Goodness gracious.
hey, there's a reason that bird is sitting on that throne. All right. Anyway, when you look at the Yankees, you have to look at them. There's the Yankees on paper, and then there's the Yankees on the field, and it's the same thing every single year. They Until they prove otherwise, the Yankees are not going to live up to their expectations. Their expectations are the same expectations that the Dodgers have with after signing Shohei, and it's literally the same. That's what their expectations are, but they never live up to it. And honestly, I think that's because of their manager. I think that's absolutely because of their manager.
I
So
do.
when you
It did
look
surprise
at
me. Boone stayed. I will agree with that. It surprised me. Boone stayed more so
I
than
was
Cashman.
surprised their
But
general manager stayed as well. Like what are they thinking over there in terms of ownership? Why are you keeping these guys who can't produce anything with a monster team who literally have the Monstars as your team? That you have That's what the Yankees are, and they can't produce. It's either they get hurt or they let them play hurt in the case of Rizzo. The Yankees are going to be the Yankees. They're going to be competitive, but I don't think they're going to win anything meaningful. I don't think they're going to win the division. They would. I could see them being a second wild card team at best.
Because of that division being as it is, I think it's going to be interesting. I do like the additions that they had. I think, look, losing Michael King might be a little bit devastating. Obviously, you have players to replace that, but he was really good for them. I also have questions about their defensive outfield, just a little bit. I think Jason Dominguez, he's out for a portion of the year, but he could be interesting in August and September if he uh, kind of lives up to everything. Um, but yeah, I think they're in a better spot personally as well than they were last year. And man, again, that division is going to be fun. AL East and NL West this year definitely going to be a fun watch.
mm-hmm.
Let us move on to the remaining free agents. Still some big names out there. Not a little bit surprising on some of these names. Not really expecting them to still be here as we enter. Today was catchers and pitchers reporting for a lot of teams, the Phillies included. You have let's start at the top, right? So Blake Snell, this man just came off of a Cy Young. He is still waiting on the call from a team. A little bit surprising. I know there's some consistency there in the past and a little bit of injury as well. But I mean, if you're a contender right now looking for, to bolster that pitching rotation, right? You're looking for a strong 3, a strong 4. This is a guy that you can plug into he can be your ace. I think he is maybe better suited as, maybe a 2, right? And can kind of carry that. But if you're looking to bolster, I think this is your pickup. I mean, Will, are you surprised that he's kind of still out there with the year he had last year? Like, to me, I'm shocked. I really am that he's still available.
Yes and no. Yes, because of the year he had, and there tends to be teams that will jump on someone coming off of the strong year. I am someone that tends to favor more so on the consistency side of it. And as you pointed out, he's been inconsistent where he has bad years, good years, bad years, good years, but his good years are really good when they happen, and occasional injuries as well. I also think the fact that he's a Boris client is one, and coming off of the Cy Young year, his demand is probably, what he wants is probably really, really high. Not just
Yes.
in dollar amount, but probably length. And I think the teams are balking specifically at that because of his consistency. There's probably no doubt that sure, you got a Cy Young, you can be worth near 30 million a year if you want, but to say that for like 7 years, maybe no. So I think in the end, he's going to have to cut down on the years to maybe like a 3-year deal. Same goes with Jordan Montgomery, but and I could see him fitting in with a couple contenders. I've seen the Angels as a team thrown around a lot with him, which I do get, but the Angels just aren't going to be contenders for a while. So I don't feel like that's going to be the ideal place for him. It's more the fallback if no one wants him near opening day. Um, but I could see me. I like him with the Brewers or the Twins, though I see both of them as more dark horse teams for him just because I have questions about the rotation, and especially the Brewers haven't really done anything to replace Burns. I don't really trust what they have behind Peralta.
Yeah. Brewers are
Part of me
interesting,
feels
right?
like
Because
part of me feels like they're moving in a different mindset here in terms of how they run things.
the
They're trying to
Brewers are
get young
interesting.
as the thing and build off that.
Yeah, I mean, look, they lose Corbin Burns. Woodruff is gone as well. He's another guy we'll talk about here in a second. But I mean, for Blake Snell, you have a guy who, as I said, coming off of a Cy Young year, he's going to be 31 this year, and maybe that raises some questions. But obviously, the 2.25 ERA this year, but you look at years prior, 3.38 in 2022, 4.20 in 2021. There is that inconsistency there, right? And you're looking at a now, I believe, 2-time Cy Young winner, if I'm correct.
Yes.
I think he won in 2018. Yeah, so he's got pedigree, and I think for again a team that is looking to solidify that starting rotation, maybe they feel like they're one piece away, they're one pitcher away. This guy is right here, right? And I think at some point he will get scooped. I do agree that he maybe needs to cut down. I don't know if there has really been anything out about what he is asking for or what we kind of think, but I think there maybe is some hesitance with teams and not wanting to pay him for 6-7 years or whatever that case may be because you just don't know, right? And we'll see really where he ends up. It's hard for me to say, right? Like I do think the Twins are an interesting spot. Um,
They're looking for more back end rotation pieces. I've seen Lorenzen and Syndergaard's names thrown their way. My main thing with the
yeah,
Twins is I find Pablo Lopez very overrated. I don't think he's a bad pitcher, but he
I
seems
don't
to
think
be
he's in the
thrown
right
out as
system.
the ace of the future. Well, he's being thrown out as like the
yeah,
ace of the future type of thing, and he's been very consistently, aside from last year, which was a bit of a step in the right direction, as having very good like first halves or second halves, and having complete opposites the other half of the year. So he's very consistently been this mid to slightly upper threes type of guy. He's been pretty durable, I think, the last few years, like 2 or 3. But he's very like flips like he's been very, very good for part of year, and then he's been very, very bad. It wasn't until last year he was kind of mid threes per se the entire year through. And
I
so
mean,
I
that
feel
kind
like
of sums
having
up
him
the whole
helps.
Twins organization, doesn't it? Very inconsistent.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, there is some aspect that I'm gonna throw some teams out there for Blake Snow. Like, for me, like I actually, funnily enough, I thought the Phillies might look into him. I know
I've
the
heard them more with
priority,
Jordan Montgomery than Snell.
right? And look, I know the priority is going to be locking up Wheeler. I understand that, but uh, you have Ranger Suarez as your 3, who's really good, but if you're the Phillies, you obviously feel like you're on the cusp. This is maybe a guy that can get you over the hump. As like, I mean, he'd be a super quality third, right? Like, I mean, he'd be
Mhm.
absolutely insane. I also look at teams like I don't know, like just like looking at rotations aside. I'm not even really thinking logistically per se, but a team like Toronto, like man, they could use another arm in their rotation. A team like the Mets would be interesting. Like if they could grab him, he'd be interesting. And I can't believe I'm saying this. And look, I don't think it's probable, but like the Pirates have actually, for the first time in a long time, been making moves in the
Mhm.
offseason. They desperately need an arm, and they're looking like they're
Mhm.
actually willing to spend this offseason.
Not
That
going to happen.
could look, I don't think so either, but it's just look, if it gets down to it for him, that would kind of be interesting, and obviously he would be the main
If
guy there. But
Blake Snell goes to the Pirates, it is solely because they are willing to give him. They're solely willing to bend over backwards and give him what he wants
I think
you're
financially.
it's
talking about
more
an
of
organization,
that Snell wouldn't want to go to the Pirates.
That's
yeah,
my point.
I think it's
which
more
Is
be
that
more
if
is
that.
he's looking to
understandable.
win, then he's not going to want to go to the Pirates. If he's going to want to just get a paycheck, and they're willing to give him
Well,
whatever he
if he sees
wants
himself as wanting to
financially,
be kind of a leader in that rotation to help build the team up, then he might be going to that team. But yeah, like you said, if he does want to do in a win now sort of situation, especially because with that
Oh
Padres
yeah,
team, they made it to the
well, I
NL
mean, he's
Championship Series, and then
31
last year
coming
they
off an
completely got shut
injury.
out of the postseason. He may be like, you know what, I want to go on that team that is destined to make a postseason run because I want to be that immediate person now. He got close with the Rays, he got close with the Padres, but he hasn't quite gotten to that cusp yet, and he is entering his mid 30s years. But I
yeah,
like
Yeah, I
back to
mean,
your Mets point for a second. One of the things that players I think could be a good fit for the Mets is Brandon Woodruff, because Woodruff's in this
yeah.
situation right now where he's not going to pitch this coming year, and neither are the Mets. But the Mets have said at the earliest they think they could compete again if the young talent progresses the way they think the art is in 2025 or 2026. Woodruff is in an ideal situation where he has 1 year of team control, but if you want to sign him to like a 2-3 year deal and make him only get like a million or something close to minimum that first year, and then give him 20 million the next 2 years or something, competitive tax balance wise, that will help them a lot. And Woodruff could then take this year off and then slide into that Mets rotation the next year when they want to compete more.
That
did
that
they
is a good
just
point.
throw in the towel for 2024? Like,
Here's
I
the
feel
thing
like
about the
that.
Mets. I still feel they have the possibility of sliding into the wild card if certain things play out. They would be like they would be like the third wild card team, but if certain things play out, um, they still have a decent enough team on paper, especially with Diaz coming back in that bullpen. That was a huge issue last year. Was when he got hurt, they really
Yeah.
did not have a strong looking bullpen that immediately exposed them.
That was such a freak thing too, man. Like I felt so
Mhm.
bad for him and them. Obviously good to have him back this year. But yeah, I think I mentioned the Mets because I think they'll be looking at some point to, if it's not this year, next year, add somebody, get some help there. But nevertheless, Blake Snell, obviously a pretty strong option. I think he is best suited for a contender to really solidify that and get a team over a hump. Looking at another free agent picture on the market right now, Jordan Montgomery, kind of that playing second fiddle right now to Snell in terms of who is left starting pitching wise um, in free agents, but obviously a very good player in himself, and he is another guy that he can kind of get plugged in and maybe get you over that hump. He's by no means an ace, of course, but I think he's a guy that can really help a contender. It's just gonna be what teams are willing to kind of go and do that who don't already have strong rotation. So like then you're getting to a situation where you kind of talked about the Angels will like are they gonna be good? Probably not, but, like, you're kind of relying on these fringe teams now if you're these free agents, so, like, okay, I'd like to go to a team that wins, but, a lot of these teams do already have their core set. A guy like Jordan
Mhm.
Montgomery is kind of interesting. I don't know where he lands, similar to Blake Snell, really, like, I do think it's gonna
Mhm.
be a contender, though.
I
I can see
have heard the
Montgomery
Phillies
going to the
as
Blue
the dark
Jays.
horse. I don't think the Blue Jays really are. Funny enough, I think the Blue Jays, I saw this earlier, actually may have had the best team ERA last year out of anyone in the American League.
Mm,
Yeah, which I found was
interesting.
a bit interesting. Um, but
Yeah.
no, Montgomery, I remember hearing that he was looking for an Aaron Nola type of deal, if not more. And when I heard that, I'm like, there's no freaking way that he's going to get anywhere close to that on money or years. He's been more durable than I thought he was looking at his stats prior to this, and he's been consistent with how well he's done. But yeah, like Snell, he's probably so looking for more of a contender or a team that's close to contending that he can join and help um, lead them to contention. I have heard the Phillies as a dark horse for them.
Yes.
Dombrowski is definitely someone that makes big splashes. The Phillies, he apparently does like Montgomery. Um, the Phillies don't need him. We have five guys that we can go with, though. We have some depth behind them now with a few signings, but if we if we were to sign Montgomery, then as long as Montgomery or Taiwan Walker by the end of the season were good enough to be a 3 starter, Suarez could easily be that guy that goes into the bullpen or becomes a number 4 starter in the postseason. It would definitely solve the issues the Phillies have had the last 2 years at truly getting all the way to the World Series. So I do like the signing, knowing that he can be a number 3 pitcher for the Phillies and not an ace and can exceed as much as he wants. I've saw today, or actually I saw this evening, there was something that said from the Rangers that supposedly they might be done adding players, which was a potential destination for Montgomery. So
Yeah.
his suitors definitely are limited. The Red Sox are a team, Angels are probably a team also with him. Teams that aren't in the playoff competition, but probably don't feel they're that far off um, in coming years. So I mean, I like Snell. If the years or dollar amounts were the drop, then I see him sliding in. I don't see anyone as being desperate right now. I feel like a lot of teams are pretty solid, at least they can where they are pitching wise. Um, but I know that like I've said, the Brewers are a team that I think could use another starter. Twins in the front end. I think in the end he's probably more likely than Snell to end up with like an Angels or a Red Sox team as
Yeah.
maybe their 1-2 guy.
He like I don't even great. I don't he's kind of weird because you like the Ranger situation. I actually think like I thought it was pretty good destination for him,
Mhm,
and they kind of have a mess right now. Like, look, they're gonna be without Scherzer, they're gonna be without Degrom for most of the season. So you kind of have a mess, like a mix mosh of starters right now, led by Nathan Eovaldi. Like
mhm.
I thought maybe they'd want to keep him around to kind of solidify that and really get them to okay, we got to the midseason mark, and now we're getting our big our big guys back, and then he kind of moves down. But I really thought the Rangers were going to be. I thought they were going to be able to resign him, and now that's kind of a question. Should be interesting, but yeah, again, another very very good free agent out there. Looking at some batters right now, Cody Bellinger coming off of a humongous year last year. Uh, Kind of getting him back into the swing of things after how good he was on the Dodgers and all that. He's still out there. Very interesting piece. Numbers kind of suggest that he obviously played phenomenal last year, but got a little bit lucky in certain situations, and with the hard contact rates and stuff like that. But he he another guy I really can't believe who's still out there. Like I think he's gonna make a team pretty happy. I thought the Cubs were a phenomenal fit for him last year too, and I want to add that because he was with the Dodgers. He was always in the spotlight and had these high expectations because how good he was. He goes to a team like the Cubs, who are one of those fringe teams again. The spotlight isn't so on him. He plays really well. Where do we see a guy like Cody Bellinger going at this point in time?
I see him staying with the Cubs.
I like the Guardians as a team, mainly because they're on the verge of they can make the postseason if the Twins slip type of thing, and they don't really have much offensively. They could use a veteran presence that could give some pop bat wise. And he could be someone that you slide in the first to give Josh Naylor some time off. You can put him in the outfield too, so he's got some versatility to help there. I do like the Cubs too. And maybe because he's staying around longer, a reunion there looks more likely. Uh, Again, it's I feel like I'm saying a lot of the same teams before, as I said before, like the Angels or the Brewers, just teams that I feel like have big gaps offensively. Um, but at this point, I feel like the Cubs would be the team I'd put my money on. But uh, any of those teams, I think, all could use a little extra power in their lineup.
Part of me almost wants him to stay with the Cubs because he finally, I mean, he was getting thrown in the mud after kind of how his Dodgers, career ended, if you will, and
Mhm.
obviously the heights he had there, and it just felt like, man, the Cubs were such a perfect fit. He didn't have to be this. He didn't have to be a superstar per se. He just, kind of did what he did. I don't know. Also, as well, maybe some swing changes happened there for him. There's kind of a lot of questions to maybe see why he played so well last year, but I kind of agree with John on this. I do think I like him back with the Cubs, or at least I think that's somewhat likely. We'll have to see how that goes. Kind of last, staple name here for free agents, Matt Chapman, coming off of a nice year with the Blue Jays. We know what he can do defensively. His bat was prominent last year at certain points. Third baseman, right? And again, a lot of the teams kind of have what they want set in stone, but this is another difference maker. I feel like for free agency, at least. I mean, we're talking about February 14th, right? Like at this point in time, for him to still be out there is also a little bit surprising. But where do we see potential shooters for him?
I mean, I can
I like
see
the
him staying
Yankees.
with the Blue Jays. I can
Nah,
The
the
see him
Blue
staying with the
Jays
Blue
seem
Yankees.
to have
Jays.
filled him with They got Kiner and Turner, and that seems fairly set. Which I do think they would have been better off with Chapman. I kind of like him with the Yankees though. Yankees have LeMahieu right now at third base. LeMahieu seems to finally have dipped off and is no longer that everyday player, which is kind of ironic that he was brought to the Yankees as a super utility guy, filled in for injury, had the MVP year or whatever, or maybe it was the predecessor to it. But anyway, he did really well, and now that he is a starter for the last couple of years, it seems like he is finally starting to dip off, where he could be better suited as a super utility guy. Yankees could be a team I could easily see be willing to splash on Chapman to help uh, defend against the rest of the AL monster we keep talking about, the AL East monster.
I could also
Does
see like a team, like a shocking team like the Angels going after him. If I'm being honest,
Mariners are another
he?
team I thought about because they don't have I don't love their third base options. Um, and that could be someone that would be a
Yeah,
nice
actually,
replacement since they lost Suarez. Because right now they have Luis
yeah,
Urias, who was with the Red Sox last year, and Josh Rojas, who they got in a trade, I believe, at the deadline from the Diamondbacks. But that's
yeah,
about it. So they would get a little bit of that power still, but definitely defense. That they weren't
yeah.
always getting with Suarez.
So again, we know what he is defensively, right? Coming off another Gold Glove year,
Mm-hmm.
he's in a very similar situation to the pitchers. I mean, he's entering his age 31 season. Um, so maybe some questions there. Okay, how long do teams want to sign a player like this for? Again, had his moments last year, ended up batting 240 in the end. Only 17 home
Mm-hmm.
runs though, so I mean, obviously some
Yeah.
pop, but I mean, Will, like for is his value a little bit less just because of that? Like, I mean, third base traditionally, right, is like that power position, and we know again how good he is
Mm-hmm.
defensively, but is that lack of pop maybe holding him back from being like obviously in the upper echelon, I guess?
100.
Yes, I
percent
do think that is a possibility that some teams, though I will say nowadays it seems less and less teams are looking at set positions as like this is your power hitting position. This is that. It's all about whatever the analytics are telling you. But I will say I think a team that is more suited power wise is willing to take the chance with Chapman, and if they don't get the real power that he had before last season, that they at least have the defense, which is why I like a team like the Yankees, who already have Soto and Judge.
I think the Mariners are a good. That could be a good spot. I
Mhm.
do like that. Um,
I think that might be a
Again,
better fit for him. If I'm being honest,
yeah, and it's a nice replacement. Like they lose Suarez, they're going to be a team that should be decent again this year, and
Mhm.
fighting for a wild card. Maybe I mean maybe the division. We'll see, um, but yeah, I think
I could see
that
them
could be a
fighting
good
for the
place for him.
division.
Yeah,
I could see
it
them
just
all at the very least until like mid September or something like that. I could see
I,
them
I
fighting for the division.
yeah, like it's tough. Right? We're in the division with the Astros. It is tough, but I think they will. All right, for our last little topic, I guess, on the show, I'm going to give you guys a couple names here um, of remaining free agents and, who will have the biggest impact, where they could end up. Uh, List of names: Tim Anderson, Michael Lorenzen, Mike Clevenger, JD Martinez, and, oh my, I always forget how to pronounce his first name, but Jin Ryu, excuse me.
Mhm.
Five guys there. Who will start with you first? Who do you think has the biggest impact wherever they sign, and where do you think they will sign?
Um, I think the biggest impact is still JD Martinez. He seemed to still have that pop in his bat last year. I see him going with the Mets. Um, I see the Mets with a big hole in the DH spot right now. They could put in some guys if they want. Um, but JD Martinez could be a nice fit you put there to complement Alonso. And as I said before, the Mets really aren't that far off from being at least in postseason contention, I think. So JD Martinez would be definitely an addition that could put them back above the Marlins and potentially sliding into that third wild card spot.
I was
And
going to say JD Martinez,
yeah,
solely
Tough tits.
because
Pick something else.
I was going to say him because, in all honesty, I would love to see the Orioles get him because I think that a big bat like him
I do think the
would
Orioles could use a bat,
really
yes.
would really help in terms of the DH spot. Um, it's really hard to say. I mean, my real opinion, and I honestly, this is going to be probably a hot take, but honestly, to completely ignore your question here, Tyler, honestly, hot take. I think Tim Anderson is the next Yasiel Puig, so I think he's going to be the least uh, effective. wherever he signs.
Look, if a team, I'll say this: if a team is looking for a resident punching bag, he might be a good option. But I mean, that is here nor there. Like, look, he got rocked last year, and that's what we all know him for. As he's been a good player though over the past few years. I really like.
He's had some.
Can't knock him
He's
too
very.
much.
He doesn't walk though. He's very much
He
swing away.
he
It typically has been good
yeah,
at hitting.
and I feel like he's
in
never
my opinion,
lived up to.
Yeah, he's the next Puig.
We know what
He's
you
the next
think.
Puig.
They
He's the
both have the
next
same.
Puig.
They both have the same temperament. I'll give you that. But yeah, I think he's always a guy that never lived completely up to the expectations. So, also two names that one Will already mentioned, but Brandon Woodruff could be an interesting option, and Liam Hendricks also coming off.
He's
of
the one
injury
I
and
wanted to bring up
obviously
because supposedly he's
yeah.
on the verge of picking a team. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be biased on this one, and I'm going to say Phillies. Only because one of the
Okay.
things I was thinking about for the Phillies this offseason was that the Phillies get a back end guy to replace Kimbrel, which they have
Yeah.
not done. They really haven't done anything bullpen wise. Which they could still, of course, do something partway through the season. They still have Alvarado, Soto, Strom, potentially now Kirkering, Dominguez. So they have the platoon options and rotation they can do as they've done in the postseason. What I like about Hendricks is that he doesn't have to be that guy for them. He can be someone that they sign. He goes through the rehab he needs to do for like half the season. They bring him back. They bring him off the IL. He becomes a part of that bullpen. They can then platoon him back and forth between being a setup guy or a closer as he gets his feet back under him, and then can be a big impact in the bullpen when the postseason comes. Plus, he's right under the Dombrowski thing of making a bit of a splash, and he's a little bit of a sneaky signing.
I think he's going to be a nice fit. Obviously, going to have some time before he comes back, but he will be a nice signing and maybe will really bolster a bullpen of a contender. But with that, I think we wrap it up here. I think we had a pretty good first episode. A lot of stuff, obviously, to talk about in the off season, and we hit some of those points, but in future episodes, I think we're looking at some predictions for us as we go kind of team by team, division by division, and giving our takes and kind of looking at the roster as a whole. Today was more of a focus on the acquisitions and kind of how we see them fitting in. But yeah, we will start to wrap it up there. Obviously, if you're watching this on Twitch and YouTube, if you're watching this on Twitch or YouTube, hi. We will be sticking around here. We are also looking at going to other platforms, including Spotify. We're working out the kinks with that. But obviously, Twitch and YouTube are a good place where we'll be live for these episodes and giving you all that juicy information as our producer continues to have fun. This is going to be a constant on this channel. I promise you that. But for all of us here at Big League Breakdowns, that is going to be it for us on this one. Happy to be back in the swing of things in the podcast game. And again, we will continue to have a lot of fun here on this one. But that is all for us here tonight. We'll see you next time.